and it'll take us just one more minute to get over there.
I see we're live now.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we are live. Welcome to our very special Memorial Day Mighty Mystery event with none other than legendary Jeffery Deaver. We are so excited to host him and talk about his brand new book, which I am absolutely devouring, The Goodbye Man. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. What an honor to have you here.
Oh, Sarah, it is my pleasure. You know, it's in this kind of a strange time now. I usually spend 2 months on the road as part of book tour. Last year, I flew over 150,000 miles going to book events and so forth. Well, that's, we don't do that now under these circumstances, but I miss it. I miss meeting my fans, talking to booksellers and thanking them for their support. So I appreciate every opportunity to reach out to people who may be interested in my books.
Well, we are all extremely interested in your books, and we have forged a very special partnership with bookshop.org, which is a brand new initiative to support independent bookstores. And we will be linking there so people can buy your book through bookshop.org, which directly buys from their indies, supports indies, and we will be linking that below in the comments. So although you need no introduction, I cannot help but sing a few of your accolades. So Jeffery Deaver, you are a former journalist, folk singer, and attorney, international #1 best-selling author. His novels have appeared on bestseller lists around the world, are sold in 150 countries, and have been translated into over 25 languages. He has sold over 50 million books worldwide. He's the author of 35 novels, including, of course, most recently, The Goodbye Man, 3 collections of short stories, a nonfiction law book. You are a lyricist of a country western album, has received or been shortlisted for dozens of awards around the world. And we are just so absolutely thrilled to have you here. You have also been honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award by the BoucherCon World Mystery Convention and by the Raymond Chandler Lifetime Achievement Award in Italy. The Strand magazine has presented Jeffery with a Lifetime Achievement Award. You have been nominated for numerous Edgar Awards from the Mystery Writers of America and Anthony, a Seamus, and a Gumshoe. Also shortlisted for an ITV Crime Thriller Award for Best International Author. And of course, he has been translated into movies and series, including The Bone Collector, starring Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie, and also an NBC series starting this January, The Hunt, Lincoln Rhyme, The Hunt for the Bone Collector. So we are so honored to have you here. Tell us about your brand new book.
Well, Sarah, I heard once there are 2 main types of stories in fiction. One is someone goes on a quest, and that would be Lord of the Rings, for instance. The other is a stranger comes to town. And I think back to that great movie of my era, and I imagine some of your viewers will know this movie, Shane, starring Alan Ladd Jr., based on the book by Jack Schaefer. And basically it was a Western, old-time Western. And Shane is the gunslinger who comes to town, and he learns there's a battle between the good ranchers and the bad cattle baron, or a mining baron, I forget exactly what he was. And so Shane sides with the good guys, and then he saves the day and rides off into the sunset. I've always loved that archetype hero. And I thought, well, you know, Lincoln Rhyme, whom I think many of your viewers may be familiar with, is a wonderful character. I'm working on the new Lincoln Rhyme book right now. And if I weren't on Zoom on my computer, I could turn it around and show you the draft I'm working on at this moment. But, so I'll always write Lincoln Rhyme, but there's another type of crime story I like to tell, and that is the stranger comes to town. Lincoln Rhyme is always in New York City. He doesn't go anywhere. He can't travel because of his condition, nor does he want to travel. He's a bit of a recluse. So I created Colter Shaw. And let me tell you a little about Colter Shaw. Colter Shaw is a modern day version of Shane, the gunslinger. What he does professionally is he gets in his, well, Winnebago, that is his horse, let's say.
Yes.
He drives his Winnebago to the site of where someone is offering a reward. Now, I'll back up a little bit here. I learned that there's a whole phenomenon of rewards offered for escaped convicts, for missing terrorists, for suspects who the police can't find, and rewards that are offered by, say, parents for their teenage son or daughter who's run off, but the police don't have any interest or motivation to go track them down because likely they've run off before. But nonetheless, that's still a very a tragic thing to happen to the parents. They want to know their child is all right, or maybe a child is worried about their parent. So I did some research into this. And so there are rewards offered from like $250 for information leading to the whereabouts of a missing person, or $1,000 for the whereabouts of an escaped convict, or in the US State Department database, $25 million for information leading to the location of a terrorist. That's an actual reward that's on the books right now. Well, I thought, so what if somebody wanted to pursue these rewards and along the way get involved with local townspeople, get involved maybe with the family of a student who's gone missing, get involved with the police who may or may not want him to participate in tracking this fellow down, because most rewards are offered for, quote, information leading to the arrest, end quote. The police do not want a gunslinger to go out there and track the guy down. That creates all kinds of problems. And so, but Colter Shaw is somebody who doesn't really need the money, we learn, but what he does is that he is a restless man. He calls himself the restless man. And to him, a reward is an indication that there's a problem nobody has been able to solve. And what does that mean? Colter Shaw is drawn to that challenge right away. And I've gone on and on here. I'll just briefly tell you about Goodbye Man. It takes up the day after the prior Colter Shaw book came out last year, named The Never Game, a day after that book ends, and it finds him in Washington State on the route of two extremists who have shot up a church and burned a cross in the front yard. And then I can't say much else, because a Deaver book is never linear and it is filled with surprises and twists and turns. Let's just say that Colter's journey takes him into a very mysterious organization in the wilderness of Washington State. And the organization may be a benign self-help group, or it may be a very dangerous cult. And beyond that, I'm sorry, your viewers are just going to have to buy the book to find out what happens. I'm a suspense writer. I have to leave my comments on a suspenseful note.
I love it. And you are known for doing that so brilliantly. So I'm completely sucked into this book. And it was so interesting and also you're known for your rigorous research. So I was so interested to learn about this reward world, because I had seen certainly notices pinned up in various places, information leading to the whereabouts of this person or whatever. But honestly, I had never given it much thought, because I never had that information, so I never got to get in there. So as I was reading this book, and I'm only a little bit into it, but I was so interested. As soon as I read that, I knew that, of course, you had in your research, because you're known for that, and that it's like there's this whole world of reward pursuers, and Colter goes there, and there's the true rewards, the reward from the family who wants their son back, and then the larger reward from the police leading to the information. And it was so interesting to me to think about that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned research. I am somebody who front ends most of the work of a book. I spend 8 months outlining and researching a book. And I mean 8 solid months, 8-10 hours a day. Joyce Carol Oates said, I'm paraphrasing now, but you cannot write the first sentence of your book or story until you know what the last sentence is. And I firmly believe that. There are wonderful writers who don't outline, and they produce marvelous books, many of which I love. My mind doesn't work that way. I have to get everything planned out ahead of time. So my process in the case of The Goodbye Man was as simple as this. A reward seeker goes after two young men who appear to be extremists, and he ends up in a cult. That's it. That's all there was to it. Well, that is not a book. I mean, if that were a book, that would not be worth the $28 or whatever they charge for books nowadays. So I have a board in my office that is full of push pins and Post-it notes. I use Post-it notes only for the different scenes in the book, but I live in North Carolina mostly, which is a very humid area. And I outlined a good portion of my book on Post-it notes on my big cork board. And I came back and I found that after lunch, that all the Post-it notes had fallen in a jumble on the floor. I couldn't remember the order of them. So now I use push pins in the cork board. But anyway, so I start out moving the Post-it notes here and there, and I add more Post-it notes, and then I will throw some out. At the same time, I'm doing the research. Now, I'm going to get on my high horse here and say a little bit. I know some of your viewers are aspiring writers, and I'm going to say you really do need to outline. Now, there are again, people, Michael Connelly doesn't outline, Harlan Coben doesn't outline, Stephen King doesn't outline. They produce brilliant books. I think the majority of people, though, and I'm among them, benefit from taking a broader view and just planning things out ahead of time. And this is good for two reasons. One is that a novel, I outline short stories too, but let's talk about novels for a minute. They're about structure as much as they are about good prose. And, you know, you can't have like 3 car chases, one right after another, or they get boring. And you can't have 3, emotional, in-depth discussions between lovers or between the police, maybe a police captain having an argument with his detective or something like that, because that gets boring. So when you do an outline, you can stand back and see the whole structure of the novel. And I think a novel should be like a symphonic piece. Think Beethoven. You start out with a theme, and da 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 da, and or whatever the piece you're thinking of, and then you move into the different movements, and you have an adagio, a slow piece, then an andante, all leading to the crescendo, and then at the end there's a coda, a slow reconciliation that might be the epilogue of your book or the final chapter of your book. And by doing an outline, I'm able to look at that whole, let's say, lead sheet of music, if you will, and see the structure of it. So an outline helps me do that. Now, an outline helps in something else that's important too. Let's say you have a wonderful set piece of an opening scene, and you write it, and it comes out very quickly, and then you say, well, okay, now the second chapter goes well, third chapter slows down. By chapter 6, you don't know where you're going to go. And you can, fill in the middle of the book with some kind of slow-moving comments, slow-moving scenes, and then your ending is tacked on, a deus ex machina, the villain comes out of left field, and the readers say, oh, been there, seen that. That happens because you've written 200, 300 pages. You don't want to throw it out. But morally, you should throw it out because we owe everything to our readers. If you outline, you get to that point in a week and say, oh, this is not a book that should be written, and you throw it away. So that's why I outline, and I firmly recommend it, and do the research at the same time.
That is so helpful. Thank you so much. And I had, prior to this conversation, done my research because I am a goody two shoes straight A student who cannot help but do rigorous research. So I had read that you do research for 8 months prior to writing. So when you have the idea of the book, and you start to pin up your Post-it notes so that the North Carolina humidity does not make the tape fall down, which would be really upsetting to come back and find them all on the floor out of order. So when you start to tack them up with your push pins, and then you're simultaneously researching, so do you outline the whole thing, then you research and keep fleshing out the outline, or you do all the research and then the outline?
I do them simultaneously because the research informs the book. I'll give you an example of a book I'm working on now, the New Lincoln Rhyme book. I will not exactly tell you the research because it's key to the villain, and I don't want to give anything away. But I had the rough outline, and it was short, probably 35, 40 pages. My outlines end up being about 150 pages by the end of the 8 months. But during that time, I'm doing research, reading in books, thinking about new scenes. And one of the things I learned in my research, just because it happened to be at the Wikipedia section about the general topic, was a very interesting fact about medieval England. Now, you wonder how on earth would that apply to a crime novel set in New York in the present day, but it was a very evocative theme. And that became a motif in the book. Now, had I finished the book and then done the research, it would have been harder to put that in. But because I was doing both simultaneously, then I could go back and kind of noodle some of the sections and then have a chapter or two devoted to that very thing as my villain reflects on how the present day is not really that much different from the past in a, by the way, really sick and twisted way. But I'll let you read that next year.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm so excited. So once you do the 8 months of the rigorous research and outlining process, how long does it, and you end up with a 150-page outline, wow. How long does it take you to then write the book from that work?
About 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Well, because see, I know where it's going. You know, my theory is that there's no such thing as writer's block. There is idea block. If you know what you want to write, then you can write it. You know, everybody now, I mean, the vast majority of people in the United States and most developed countries have the linguistic ability to write a book if they know what they want to write. And they have the wherewithal and the desire to do so. So when you have the outline done, you, while you're doing the outline, you will experience block. Oh, there's no question about it. But block is different when you're trying to come up with an idea rather than hammer out the prose and look at, you know, the blank chapter 42, and you kind of know that the villain here has to go someplace and find a clue. Well, if you do that in outline form, you can say chapter 42, hero has to go someplace and find a clue, and that's all it says there. And then you think about it a little bit and you say, okay, he goes to a former bank and goes to the vault and finds something. Well, now you've got an idea to work with. And then when it comes time to write that in the book, then maybe you do a little research into old bank vaults, and then you write that down, and you can move forward from there. But you don't need to write the book from beginning to end. You can write in any order, and you're never going to be blocked because you'll go back to your outline and think, okay, well, I can write this scene now. I don't have to worry about this scene jumping into the next scene. And so I can jump around. I might write the beginning at the end. I might write the end at the beginning. It doesn't matter. That's why an outline is so valuable. But then that's 2 months of writing. Then it takes me a year to write a book total. And if my math is correct, that's 8, 2, and 2. 2 months of rewriting, rewrite. Ernest Hemingway said there are no great writers. There are only great rewriters. And that is so true. And you, a little more authorial advice here. Outline half the book on your computer. Oh, I'm sorry. Outline your book, write it, and then edit half of the times on the computer and then half the times on paper, because we process the written word very differently on paper than we do when it's on the screen. And when you read the book in print, after you printed it out, you will see not only typos, you'll see typos that jumped out at you, things you'd missed on the screen, but you will see conceptual problems in a book that you had looked at a dozen times, 24 times. So always print it out. And I rewrite 50 times. The last rewrites are very fine tuning because ideally it's getting better and better, but 20, 25 on the screen, print it out, and I'm not an influencer. Hammermill gives me no money for this, but I have about 10 reams, and if I think that's correct, I think it's 50,000 sheets of Hammermill computer paper and a bunch of laserjet cartridges, and I just burned through a lot of paper to revise the book over and over and over again.
Well, with that glowing recommendation, I think that both Hammermill and inkjet laserjet printers will be clamoring to sponsor you, because that is a glowing review, and you are so amazing. So in those 50 times that you're revising in the final 2 months of the year that you have taken, so 8 months researching, 2 months of writing, and then 2 months of rewriting, and in those 2 months, you estimate that you rewrite 50 times. Is it reading it through start to finish on the computer and then on the paper and going back and forth, toggling back and forth, one per medium?
Well, I only do the first 20 or so edits are on the computer.
Okay.
then that's gone for the next edits. Of course, it's a digital world now, so I edit a let's say version 26, and that's printed out. And then I go back and input those changes and print that out again. And I will say one other thing that has changed my life in a big way. You know, I've been doing this now for over 35 years. I've been writing full-time now for over 30 years. And I've got a lot of books written, a lot of short stories written, but you're always learning something new. And I, you know, getting to a certain age, my eyes aren't as great as they used to be. And so the editing, reading over and over and over again was getting a bit taxing. And I thought, well, you know, maybe I'll just listen to the book if I could. Are there programs where I can actually plug the book into the computer and have a voice read it to me? Now, this is before an editor sees it. Nobody, those 50 rewrites, not a single human being has seen the book at this point. This is only so I can get it up to my satisfaction. Well, and I learned about something else. And as long as we're going the influencer route, Sarah, maybe I have a career at this. There's a program called Natural Reader, and it is I think I bought the what's the free one, whatever, you have to listen to ads. So I bought the one, the paid version, very inexpensive. And so I plug my book in, and a voice reads it very well. I mean, it doesn't get everything right. It doesn't, you know, realize if you italicized a word for emphasis, it doesn't get that. But generally, it does a very good job of reading. And now I listen to it while at the same time, I thought I'd just listen to it and get changes, but sorry. No,
it's okay.
I always tell people to shut their phones off. And I guess I didn't, though, did I?
That's totally okay.
Okay, there we go. Oh, that's right. It's my interview. I can do
it's your interview.
Okay, fair enough. So anyway, I thought I was only going to listen to it and hear changes. No, what I do is I may let my eyes rest a little bit, but I follow along word for word while I listen. And I have found, I can't tell you how many other typos by doing that process. So that's something else I'd firmly recommend to anybody out there.
Wow, this is so helpful. And I've read and I've noticed in my own writing practice that when I read it myself, I noticed that when I print it out, I noticed things that I would have sworn I weren't there when on the screen. I've read it 50 times on the screen, but you print it out and you see it differently. And then I've tried reading my own words to myself and I hear it differently as well there, but I had not even thought of this other possibility.
And Sarah, I have to say the other thing that helps is when you're reading, the mind is a very funny thing. When you're reading your own work, you know what's coming and you tend to skip ahead. And by reading more slowly, reading word for word, you will find things that you took for granted. And so the reading aloud, and you don't have to buy a program to do that. I think Word, actually, Microsoft Word comes with a function that does that. Or you might have a partner or spouse, and if you take them out to a nice dinner, they might read the book to you.
I like that idea. Exactly. That's so interesting, though. So you're working because you're experiencing your book in 3 different media, which is the computer, the paper, and then also audio.
Exactly.
Listening to it. So you're having 3 totally different experiences, and it sounds like experiencing that book and seeing it differently, which is absolutely fascinating.
Well, it's an immersive experience, and it should be. When I teach my courses in writing, and I'd recommend if your viewers are curious,
yes.
I'm not doing any right now, obviously, because we're in a different time. But I'll have students come up to me and say, I want to write, but I can't find the time. And I'm very encouraging because, we have all sorts of demands. It took me 5 years to be able to write full time. But I say, well, find whatever time you can. An hour a day will get a book written. It may take a little longer than you planned, but just keep at it. But the people I know are going to be, I can't guarantee success, but at least will be successful in the sense that they have finished a book and have a book ready to go to an agent or a publisher, are the ones who come up to me and say, Jeff, you know, I can't find time to do the other stuff in my life. My grades are suffering. Frankly, my work is suffering. My relationships, ideally, they're not suffering, but they certainly have been impacted because of this writing thing. And you've got to play the game 110% if you want to be certainly a full-time writer, or if you want to be a published writer. It's, you know, you have to jump in with both feet, and don't let anything stop you.
And I was also reading in my research that you started writing originally on your commute to and from Fordham, where you were attending law school, to prepare you for a legal career and a career as a legal correspondent. And it was on the commute that you started writing, and then it grew from there. You have also published.
You know, I had one of the first laptop. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
I had one of the first laptop computers ever made. It was made by a company called Nippon Electronics, and I think they went on to, they got out of the computer business, I believe. Well, I know they did, and they started to make monitors and other things. But this was in the 1980s. Now, you know, they called it a laptop computer. Well, what they didn't tell you was you could also take a laptop block of concrete and put it in your lap, and it would be a laptop block of concrete. And I think this thing weighed maybe 19 or 20 pounds, not like the 6 or 7 pounds now. So I would show up at Grand Central Station and my legs had fallen asleep, and I had to wait to get to the office and get to school.
I'm sure. Yeah, I remember my first laptop, and it felt like it weighed 20 pounds. I mean, lugging that thing around, it's nothing like the little ones that they have now. It's a commitment. What about the titles of your books? So how do you arrive at them?
Titles can be very easy, or it can be a complete nightmare. Most of mine, I've written of the novels, all the novels I've written, all the short stories, I think only 2 I have not been able to come up with a satisfactory title. And that's been done by my editors, or my editor in one case, my agent in another. And they came up with excellent titles that went, you know, it never even occurred to me. I'd come up with 40 or 50 of them that just didn't work. But generally they come up somewhere during the writing of the book. I usually have a working title. Occasionally they precede the book itself. The Goodbye Man was a cross between, it was going to be the Farewell Man or the Goodbye Man, and Farewell seemed a bit archaic to me, kind of 19th century. So I settled for Goodbye Man, but there were several before that. That one came pretty quickly, and I was going to have a title. I used it as a subhead in the book, and if you've gotten to the first section, you've seen that. The Woman on the Ledge, or Woman on the Cliff, I can't remember which it is. I wrote it quite a while ago. And I wasn't going to go the girl route. You know, Gillian Flynn's a friend of mine. I love Gone Girl. And then there was Girl on the Train. But I'm sorry, I'm stepping up. I was going to do a woman in the title. I was going to have the Woman on the Cliff. And then what happens, but just recently a fellow named A.J. Finn published Woman in the Window. So couldn't do that. And I think then there was a woman in a cabin. I can't remember that story. So Woman got taken away from me. So I was left with Man. And so what was going to happen? Goodbye Man. But one thing I'll say about titles, I love them to serve double duty. And I can't give anything away in this book, but there's one theme that involves Colter Shaw's father that runs throughout both the Never Game, which was last year's Colter Shaw book, and this book, and will run throughout the third book, which I'm writing right now. And we could say that Colter Shaw's father was a goodbye man for some reason. And we could say that in the Goodbye Man book itself, there is a man who is responsible for some goodbyes. I'm being delicate and careful there. And then also, Colter Shaw, being the restless man, he travels around the country. He does have a home, but he's never there. He lives on the road. And of course, he has love interests too. Is he going to be the goodbye man to the woman he meets in the Goodbye Man novel. And I can't tell anybody that, but it's something to think about.
Well, I'm excited to get to that part. Speaking of research, so culture drives a Winnebago. What was your research process for Winnebagos?
It was arduous. It was long. It was incredibly complicated, quite dangerous too. I went to the Winnebago website.
Uh-huh. And then that was it?
That was it, yeah.
Okay, we have a question from the audience. Are you writing multiple books at once? Because I know you mentioned you're working on Lincoln Rhyme and then also a third Coulter book. So tell us about that.
I am right now. These are as people look back at your, our archived conversation. Ideally, the country and the world will be in a much better place. But now we're in the middle of the pandemic, and I have been quarantined for over 2.5 months. My life is not very much different. I'm very social. I do a lot of dinner parties. That's been very hard for me. But my angst does not approach the hardship that so many people are having around the world. So I'm certainly not complaining about that. But I am putting my time to good use. So I'm writing two full novels right now, a Coulter Shaw that begins 8 hours after The Goodbye Man ends, and the new Lincoln Rhyme, as yet untitled. And I'm writing 2 short stories. And I'm, if your viewers like my short stories, I do short stories with Amazon Original Shorts. So just go to Amazon and look those up. They're longer short stories. They're about 15 to 17,000 words. I have a new one coming out pretty soon. And I'm also editing an anthology of short stories. And it's a great title. It's called Nothing Good Happens After Midnight. That title. And that's got some very fun people in it. I know Heather Graham's in it, Hank Philippi Ryan. I've got a story in it. So look for that. It's not going to be out until later in the fall. But so I'm doing that and just keeping busy. And I'm doing some cooking videos too. So check out my social media and you'll see, don't expect recipes. You'll just watch me try not to set fire to things in the kitchen. It's fun.
Well, I love to cook and I love to watch other people cook. So I will be tuning in religiously for those. Because Jeff, you're such a Renaissance man. I mean, you're a songwriter for a country western album. You raise dogs and show them professionally. You obviously are an incredibly accomplished, hugely successful writer. You write short stories, you cook. I mean, you're a Renaissance man. Is that fair to say?
Well, thank you, Sarah. What I would say is that someday, if you throw it up against the wall, something's got to stick.
So would you say this is all different iterations of your creativity? What's your relationship to creativity?
It's a good question. I don't know that I've been asked that before, but I think if I could come up with one word, it would be self-defense. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I have an incredibly high, well, I'll put it this way, the reverse way, incredibly low boredom tolerance. I cannot stand to be bored. I'm very fidgety and restless. And so I am, even when I did my height of traveling, where I would often travel with extra batteries for my computer, extra chargers, of course, in case I lost one, and backup thumb drives in case the computer broke and I had to get a new computer. I always carried around a pad and paper so that I could work, so I could write. So creativity is a way to stave off boredom. I guess that kind of puts it in a negative context, but I guess if it works, it works.
Absolutely. Do you have a special kind of food that you like to cook? Do you cook within one ethnicity, or do you do Italian food, or you just go where the muse leads?
I do everything. In fact, after we discontinue this, I'll be making using a modified Julia Child recipe to make pomme de terre de dauphinoise. It's my French is terrible, but it's like basically potatoes au gratin, a French potatoes au gratin dish. And then I made a Guinness beef stew. There's a video of that. I make coq au vin. That's a Burgundy dish, a chicken fricassee dish. I do cook Italian. I've made sushi, but sushi is a hard thing to make. It's all about the rice. In Japan, it's the rice that's the key. There's a smaller sliver of fish or some vegetable on it. You enjoy the rice, and it's a tricky thing, a tricky rice dish to make. So I have made that, but not too much. I make a lot of curry, a lot of Indian food, and then barbecue. I'm in North Carolina, so I make a good barbecue, which is, of course, the best barbecue, with all respect, of anywhere. And we of course use my pulled pork. I use a bit of mustard and brown sugar and vinegar, and cook a pork shoulder down for a long time. I'm getting hungry now that I think about it. Not talking to you, Sarah. Boy, it's almost dinner my time.
I know you whet my appetite. Now I feel like I just want to drive down to North Carolina and have some of that delicious barbecue.
We'll socially distance 6 feet away. I'll do a barbecue in my driveway. How's that?
I will willingly. I think we would all happily sit 15 feet apart in your driveway to sample some of that barbecue. That sounds amazing. So I just want to ask you one more thing about your writing process, because I read that you, once you're ready to write, you go into a dark room, you close the shades, you turn off all the lights, and you actually write in a completely dark room. Close your eyes and then write what you see in your mind's eye.
Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful to me. I am a very pedestrian author. I'm not a great stylist like David Foster Wallace was, or Annie Proulx, who wrote the Shipping News, or Cormac McCarthy. Maybe my journalism training. And also, I read that by the time we're 8, we pretty much have our language skills solidified within us developmentally. And so I'm not a great stylist, but I strive for clear communication. But I do have a very vivid visual and auditory imagination. I can close my eyes and see and hear things and smell them. So when I look at my outline and see Lincoln Rhyme now needs to find a clue, say, involving mustard, I'm making this up, I will close my eyes or shut the lights out in the room to make it somewhat less dark. I either need to close my eyes or shut the lights out. I don't have to do both. I just can't look at the words on the screen. And then I sit down and I can touch type, and I create the scene in my head as I see it, as I visualize it. So it's like I'm transcribing a movie. I can hear the dialogue. One of the things about the movie, The Bone Collector, that I was so pleased by was that the script writer said, Jeff, I didn't have to come up with dialogue. I simply used your dialogue because it's very authentic. And if you read some books, and this is something else I'll give some advice to your listeners and your viewers about, you've got to read your dialogue out loud. Characters do not say, and I've read this in so many books that I've been asked to critique, I will now go to the grocery store and I will return in perhaps a half hour. Well, people don't talk that way. You don't turn to your partner and say, my darling, I'm famished. Shall we now dine? You say, I'm hungry. What do you want? You want pizza? Yeah, want pizza. That's the way people talk. I mean, even people who are well educated and otherwise would not write that way. Nonetheless, they talk that way. So I always hear the dialogue in my head. So I use a lot of contractions. I use a lot of vernacular, and I think that adds the credibility of the book. I mean, the point of writing our type of fiction. Well, I'm going to negate that. The point of writing fiction, period, is to create emotional engagement with the reader. Authors have a moral responsibility to pick up the reader on the first page and drag them kicking and screaming through the book with terror, excitement, with joy, not necessarily kicking and screaming in a bad way, but just this engagement to the very end where they get off on the final page, like they get off the roller coaster and breathe a sigh of relief. And I don't mean car chases necessarily. I mean Little Women. You have to be grabbed from the very first scene, which you are in that book. And so that's our responsibility, to make sure that this book has the greatest emotional impact. And you, as an author, need to do everything you can. And that's dialogue, that's plotting, that's characterization, that's setting, that's picking your words. You know, does somebody need a thesaurus or a dictionary to find what the author meant? Well, if so, that author has done a bad thing. That's not the way it should be.
I love that. I feel like I'm getting an MBA in creative writing just by chatting with you. This is amazing. So Jeff, let me ask you, when just going back to the different scenes in this book, which you have written in the dark room, or with your eyes closed, what is your favorite scene in The Goodbye Man? Do you have a favorite scene?
I must say, I will talk about a scene, but I don't have a particular scene in the book. For me, I take an objective view of the book when I look at it. Favorite to me means that the readers will enjoy it. And if I get a little shiver down my spine at a scene I've written, whether it's the prose or because of something I've set up, I'm suspect of that because I'm not the audience for the book. I'm the creator of the book, and the audience for that book is the readers. I want them to be excited. But there is a scene where, and it doesn't involve a shoot 'em up or anything like that. It's a scene where somebody we thought we had said goodbye to has returned in a very emotional way. There's no gunplay involved. There's no violence involved, but it's an appearance that resonates on several levels. And I have to let it go at that, but I will say it's in the third portion of the book. The book is divided into 3 sections. It's in the 3rd section, and you and your readers, or you and my readers, will know when you come to that scene exactly what it is.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm still in the 1st section because I'm actually trying to savor every word while simultaneously being pulled, which I am. I'm so sucked in, but I can't wait to get to section number 3 and read about that, to get to that scene. And I hope that I'll know it just when I see it. Jeff, you've also said that the best way to learn writing is to study the work of other writers you admire. We all here so admire you and your work. Who do you admire? Who have you studied?
There are just so many. I'll just list some of the authors that I've read over the years, and that some of these I actually have outlined their books. I've pulled it apart. Well, I don't mean literally pulled it apart. You should do that to a book. I have written down bullet points of each scene. But Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, of course. John D. MacDonald, who wrote the Travis McGee series in the 1950s. Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond books. Dashiell Hammett, who wrote Sam Spade. John le Carré, who wrote the George Smiley books, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, and is writing back in the 70s, 60s, I think late 60s, and is writing until today, probably my favorite thriller slash genre writer, although he transcends to literacy. I mentioned Annie Proulx, who wrote the Shipping News, just an incredible talent in the UK. While we're still in this country, I'll mention Saul Bellow, the literary writer, Kathy Reichs, who wrote Tempe Brennan, Karen Slaughter, one of my favorite authors. I like Michael Connolly, I like John Connolly. I like in the UK, John Connolly is a UK author, Irish author, so that pushes me over there. Ian Rankin and Georges Simenon, Agatha Christie. I could go on and on. You don't get into this business without loving to read. And one of the hardest parts of my business now is that I write 8 hours a day, 8 to 10 hours a day. And again, the eyes aren't so great. So I can't do what I used to do, crawl into bed with a book at night. It's just kind of hard on the eyes, but I do listen to a lot of books. That's always a good alternative.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful array of authors that really spans so many different times and places, and this is really wonderful. Well, I could literally talk to you all day about food and everything else. I'm a passionate cook and a passionate reader and a passionate writer. This has been such an enriching and heart-fulfilling and nourishing conversation. I guess I want to just ask one more thing. What is one thing you want people to feel when they read your books or this book, The Goodbye Man?
I alluded to it a moment ago, but I think I will say this. What I strive for in crafting a book or a short story is for the reader to sit down and have happen to them what happened to me when I was a young reader. And it was this. I lost myself in a book so much that the outside world fell away completely. And I existed in that story. And for me, that story was all there was in the world. And I think that's a good thing. That's what books should do. And books do that more than movies and TV shows, because as much as I binge on Ozark and Breaking Bad and all the wonderful things that we can now see on television, but the one difference between books, movies, music, the plastic arts, painting, sculpture, and books, on the other hand, or whether it's a story or a novel, is that we, the readers, are partners with the author. And that's not true of any other art form, not true of any other art form. We sit back and passively watch the wonderful shows we like. And that's great. I do it as much as anybody. But with a book, we create the appearance, we create the scene, we create the sound of the voices, we create the smells. And that's why I think it's a stronger emotional tie. And that's what I want readers to come away with. I want them to close the book and say, oh, I was out of this world for a short while, and I want to go back to that place at some time.
Oh, I love that. And it's so true. I mean, growing up, books were everything to me. And the library was my favorite place to go, and immersing myself into the world of that book was my favorite thing to do. And it's still my favorite thing to do. I want to go into that other world and see what they see and experience what they experience. And I think your books do that so beautifully and so completely. So thank you for this incredible body of work that you have created. Thank you for spending part of your Memorial Day here with us today. We will be linking, we are already have been linking to your website, your social media. Can't wait to see all those cooking videos. Everyone follow Jeff, buy the book. We are linking to it with our special partnership with bookshop.org, supporting independent bookstores during these challenging times. And everyone go read The Goodbye Man. It is so fantastic, as is all of Jeff's incredible body of work. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible.
Well, Sara, thank you so much for your wonderful laudatory remarks. I'm humbled and blushing right now, but basically it's just fun to get together and talk with another book lover. And I know there are many of them out there. So goodbye to you. Goodbye to everyone.
Thank you so much, and happy cooking. Have a great rest of your Memorial Day. And thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye now.